Hi, everyone, and good evening. Welcome to tonight's webinar, The Value of Independent Research in College Admissions. I'm Kathy Hart. I'm an educational consultant, part of the JRA team. I am going to be behind the scenes tonight off camera, keeping an eye on the chat and making sure everything goes smoothly. So welcome to tonight's presentation. It sounds like a great one. I'm eager to learn more myself. So just a few housekeeping items before we get started. First of all, you can post all questions in the chat, whichever platform you are viewing this on tonight. We will have time towards the end of the presentation for questions and answers for Barb and for GP. And any handouts are available at scorewebinar.com, which is the landing page. Also, if there are any audio or video issues in the webinar, we are recording it this evening. We will have a recording available on our website within a day or so. So I'm going to go ahead and invite my friend and colleague Barb on screen with me. And let me just give you a little background on Barb. So Barbara Leventhal is our moderator this evening. She brings to our educational consulting practice more than 30 years of experience as a teacher, administrator, and college counselor. She notes that all parents take great pride in the special qualities of their children. Her role is to define those qualities and channel them in unique ways that tell a compelling story for college admission. Many parents know Barbara as a guru behind student projects. Her ideas inspire students to create original projects based on their interests. Fully engaged with her proteges, she then guides them through to project implementation. Some have created projects that drew thousands of dollars in donations. Others have written and published Amazon best-selling books. So welcome, Barb. Thank you so much. I am going to turn off my camera now. I will turn on.
Hey, Kathy. Thank you for that great introduction. Good afternoon or good evening, depending on where you're watching this from. So that would be great if you would put in the chat hello and where you're viewing our program from. And I'm just going to begin by giving you a little bit of insight about the value of research in independent, in college admissions. So one of the questions that you'll find on almost every college application is, how did you spend your summers, or how did you spend the last 2 summers? And all schools, especially Ivy League schools, want to see that students have spent their time constructively, engaging in a field that they're passionate about, learning more about themselves or the world around them. No college admissions person will be impressed by a student who basically just spent the summer chilling after a long, tough school year. So a word to the wise, get busy. Summer's about to start. Don't let the weeks go by without engaging in something that will help you learn and grow. And at this point, most disciplines provide research opportunities. For many years, there have been certain research programs that have been considered the Rolls-Royce of research. Programs like the Research Science Institute at MIT, the Simmons Garcia Summer Research Program at Stony Brook, or the Governor's Schools. For example, the Florida Governor's School actually was held locally right here in Boca Raton. The engineering section was at FAU, and Palm Beach State hosted the Maths and Science. These programs are so prestigious that a student interested in math or science who attended one of these programs is virtually guaranteed acceptance to a highly selective college. But over the last year or so, I've noticed a trend change. And that is, in the past, STEM majors applying to highly selective schools have always been required to do research. But during the past year, in end of 2019, 2020, the emphasis on research has broadened to include the social sciences. In addition to doing research, students who are working with mentors in research, either through organized programs at universities or other paid programs, or doing it on their own, are encouraged to publish their papers, to participate in national competitions like the Science Olympiad, the Physics Olympiad, to speak at conferences, and some of the kids even apply and receive patents. And all of that information is asked for on the Common App. There's a space to put in all of those wonderful accomplishments. So high school research really does provide benefits for students, whether they're published or not, whether they are patented or not, because it allows students to experience the excitement of research and discovery. Research is a continually growing lifetime experience that prepares students for college. And finally, students can use their research as a resource long after it's completed and even after their high school graduation. So there's no downside to getting started with a great research project. So the type of student who is usually interested in research is that talented kid, that gifted kid, that driven kid, that curious kid who has a specific interest in something. So if you're wondering what type of research matters to the colleges, whether you're a parent or a student watching this evening, here are a few questions to ask yourself. Is the research relevant to the field or major your student's applying for? Did your student contribute to the research and take time to understand each step of the process? Did your student have to go through a selection process to get this research opportunity? So you might have, the student might have had to make phone calls to the university, or send emails, or send resumes, or even go through an interview. Is there someone in the research department who worked with your child who can vouch for your student by way of a phone reference or a letter of recommendation? Did the research end up with a publication, or is it at least on its way to one? These are the things that you want to consider as we go forward tonight with our program. So I'd like to introduce our special guest this evening, who is Dr. George Philip LeBourdais. And welcome.
Thank you, Barb.
For joining us tonight. I know we have some nervous students behind the scenes waiting to make their debut too, but we'll keep everybody waiting and while you give your presentation. So welcome.
Great.
Thank you.
I'm so grateful to be here. Thanks very much for the invitation. I'm so happy to be speaking with some specific students later on and to be presenting to the group. Let me begin my screen share here. Great. Tonight we'll be speaking about the power of research in college admissions. And I'd like to give you a brief overview of what I'll be covering. We'll begin with my own research background, defining research, what exactly research is, and some abstract or general definitions. Why colleges value research is, of course, at the crux of why you are here this evening. How research can enhance college admissions, how research benefits students beyond those admissions in their studies and going forward in their life as well. The process through which you could find mentors and develop a research topic, and different ways of sharing and showcasing your research once it's complete. So with that overview, I'll tell you a little bit about myself. My PhD is in the history of art and architecture at Stanford University. And through my time earning that degree, I did a lot of different fellowship and foundation funded types of research grants, including the Mellon Foundation, the Luce Foundation, and the US Fulbright Commission. A crowning achievement of my Fulbright grant in Switzerland, where I was researching cultural geography and working on some early digital humanities mapping style projects with a university consortium. You can see me here on the top of Mont Blanc very proudly during a summer climb. And as you might be able to tell, that is part of my overall research interest, not only in modern art, but also in the interplay between art and technology, those sort of intersecting fields. And I'll speak more about that as far as student research goes as well. As far as my mentoring and teaching goes, I was an instructor for Stanford's Vice Provost for Teaching and Learning, working with disciplines across the university to train new graduate instructors on how to be more efficient, more meaningful with their teaching, strategies for improving student outcomes and retention, and also harnessing the core mission that Stanford liked to imbue to all of its teachers across the university in many different fields. So I've taught for more than 10 years total at Williams College and at Stanford, and I actually, before going back to graduate school, taught at the secondary level at Millbrook School, and I still continue to volunteer teaching AP classes and reviewing student art portfolios, photography portfolios, teaching histories of art and architecture in AP curricula at Palo Alto Unified School District high schools, including Gunn School. After finishing my PhD, I worked for 2 years as a research program manager at the Digital Humanities Lab at Stanford. The digital humanities is really a way of bringing computational methods, data science style methods, and visualization techniques to study the arts, the humanities, social sciences, a really broad application. On the left, you see a really wonderful project we did at the lab on Kindred Britain that you can see sort of maps out in a networked genealogical way the different connections to, here is pictured William Shakespeare, but all of these illustrious figures within British history. And on the right, you see a screenshot from an interactive dynamic mapping site that I created for my dissertation that was on the first photographs of the Arctic from the 1860s. Very much about climate change and how the pictures from this previous period can give us insights to how the world, how glaciers in particular, are changing today. So that brings us to this sort of second large question, which is what research is to begin with. There are a lot of really provocative and even canonical definitions. One that I like is research is a systematic investigation of a topic that leads to new discoveries. And because I'm so interested in the sort of mapping quality of how we define space, I like to think of it as mapping uncharted intellectual space through repeatable steps. That is defining a clear question, reviewing the literature, applying known methods, experimenting with new tools, creating new hypotheses, and then marking progress and beginning again, having taken a step forward. This quote from Albert Einstein is very evocative, I think. If we knew what it was we were doing, it would not be called research, would it? Throughout this presentation, I'd like to sprinkle in a few of the projects that we've done with Polygence, which is the company that I work for currently. There are lots of other wonderful companies that are working with students to produce original and really impressive work that tap into their own innate curiosity and passions. This one was with a 16-year-old from Mountain View, California, using natural language processing. That's basically a machine learning tool to perform large-scale text analysis. It was looking at language used in the 2020 presidential elections and really exploring how the media wrote about different candidates and the kinds of words that were used. So what it discovered is these really wonderful, or in some cases unsettling, I suppose, biases in the use of different verbs, adjectives, and the connotations associated with them regarding power, agency, sentiment, etc. And the outcome of the project was that I was accepted to a workshop at a very prestigious conference, the annual conference for the Association of Computational Linguistics. So this is all to say that even in high school, you can do things that your mentors themselves will recognize and appreciate and really want to bring you into conversation about. Okay, so why do colleges value research to begin with? And the best way I can sort of summarize this is that it's considered to be the pinnacle of achievement in higher education. So I've broken schools into two main categories. One is for R1 universities, that is to say the top research universities, where research is a collaboration between students and professors. It's a primary factor in determining university rankings and grants, and is also a way to make tenure decisions and decide who gets promoted internally. Typically at these R1 schools, research is even valued above teaching excellence, because this is what is pushing the reputation of the college or the university forward. And I'll get to that a little bit more later on as well. For PUIs, where I went to school, I did my undergrad degree at Middlebury College and then my master's at Williams College. For those predominantly undergraduate institutions, research is actually more of a tool for teaching research processes. But it's not just an exercise. Actually, at these PUIs, there's often wonderful opportunity for students as undergrads to publish alongside their professors. And that's why you see such wonderful acceptance rates to graduate schools from great liberal arts colleges. In that sense, it's a chance for students to lead their own lab work. They're the ones that are getting their hands dirty and going through the process on their own sometimes. To speak for my own institution, here are just a few of some notable inventions that have really led to sea changes in the way that different fields conduct research. The invention of antibody therapies in the 1980s produced a technique for functional antibodies, which enable treatments of autoimmune diseases and cancer. In 1973, Cohen and Boyer created recombinant DNA, DNA, from different organisms that really launched a new age of genetic engineering that we're still building on today. And of course, you're all familiar with the evolution of Google from two Stanford graduate students in 1998. Originally called Backrub. We are all so happy they changed the name of the product to Google rather than Backrub. But their PageRank algorithm that they invented while graduate students became the sort of search engine for the world of information that we experience today online. And this brings me to the next point of why institutions value research. When Stanford sold their shares of Google in 2005, they made over $300 million. They sold early in order to avoid conflicts of interest, but that brings me to just a snapshot of the value of research in a quantified way at Stanford alone. In fiscal year 2019 and 20, Stanford's gross revenue from 847 technologies was $114 million. 10 of those inventions generated more than $1 million, and you can see many more generated more than $100,000. And the total budget for the 7,700 externally sponsored projects for that fiscal year was $1.93 billion, 474 million coming from non-federal sources, and that amounts to 17% of Stanford's annual funding. So you can see this is not just something that attributes the prestige or the success of a university. It is a core driver of the university's financial well-being, in addition to all of those other things. So this is to say that great schools want great researchers. And this is why even in high school, if you don't publish your own individual paper, the fact that you're going through research and showing enthusiasm about it is very appealing to a lot of admissions officers, all the more so now because you may know, readers of the Chronicle of Higher Education, that many deans of research at grade R1 schools are actually quite concerned about the effects of the pandemic on the pipeline of new students interested in entering graduate programs. Without new students to enter these programs, the research cannot be done. The grants won't come in, the experiments will be put on hold, and the progress of knowledge will slow, in addition to all of the other financial implications that might have for specific schools. This is, I think, why research really enhances college applications these days. An interesting quote from the US News and World Report: high school students who have an impressive personal project they are working on independently often impress colleges because their commitment to a solo endeavor conveys self-discipline and originality. The initiative that they're showing is something that's very palpable with these kinds of research projects. Now, grades and test scores are also very important, obviously, but they can be weak predictors of future success. My co-founder, János, who is a physicist from MIT by training, likes to point out that Sir John Gurdon, the Nobel Prize winner in medicine, ranked last in his class in biology out of 250 people. And yet he went on to make these amazing discoveries. The outcome of those tests can also be highly dependent on coaching. Standardized test scores often reward rote learning and not very often reward originality. So the way that colleges are increasingly viewing this is to move away, of course, accelerated by restrictions from the pandemic. There's a seismic shift away from standardized tests and towards independent projects. I'm sure many of you know that the University of California, Caltech, have dropped SATs, and the College Board has eliminated SAT subject tests and essays as of January 2021. Another interesting quote from a former admissions officer at Cornell. Dozens of high-achieving students whose applications I've read were academically stellar, but their applications lack tangible indicators of their passions. A project, experiment, portfolio, or endeavor that they spent substantial time learning, tinkering, or creating on their own. So I think that this is why this sort of ubiquitous term passion projects is bandied around a whole lot. It may seem a little stilted in some ways, but I think we're all really interested in finding what drives us. And so it's important, I think, to find a project or find an area of research, even while you're in high school, that you feel is going to pull you forward to help you become who you wish to be. Another great example of a project that we've done at Polygence is a very sophisticated computational analysis of mRNA sequencing within cancer cells. And specifically, though this is over my head from the History of Art and Architecture, ribosome stalling trends in cancer translation, looking at this genetic data. But the outcome is the student made some very interesting observations about the likelihood of ribosomes to stall and the effects on the translation and replication of cancer within cells. And that article is, as a peer-reviewed article, has been accepted by the Journal of Emerging Investigators, which is really one of the premier secondary student journals in STEM fields. Okay, so how do you feature this research when you've done it? Many counselors or people who have gone through an application process recently might have seen that research projects is very often included in supplementary application materials, including at all of these wonderful schools. That is not a comprehensive list. MIT, since 2013, has been asking students to submit creative portfolios. This is something that I want to spend a few more minutes speaking about with you because I know, having spoken with Barb, that some of her colleagues are interested about how to arrange these. Very often people are familiar with artistic or creative portfolios, but they have less experience in framing research or framing scientific study in such a way that it can be conveyed in a portfolio. So let me go through that a little bit too. These points that I'm about to share are taken from some resources I'll be happy to pass forward to interested parties. But the main point that I want to share at the get-go is that portfolios are really self-assessments that are designed to tell a story. You can tell a story on a college application essay, but very often the visual aspect of a portfolio helps that story to come alive. You might be not at all surprised to hear that it's really taken from the arts, where the idea of portfolios was created, where they are used to convey tangible evidence of personal and technical growth within an individual. This helps students to stand out from the crowd. It also, thinking from the other side of things, it helps admissions staff, many of whom are not going to be experts in things like machine learning algorithms or cancer biology. It allows them to help understand the projects that you have created in your spare time with this passion. And also that you're able to convey it in a way that's clear and digestible for someone who's not in the field. This is a way of sort of answering the so what question. How does this affect, how can it have an impact on the real world in which we all live, not just on specialists? And portfolios stem from this maker movement, which is really about recentering the emphasis on lifelong learning rather than attaining a specific degree. And ironically, I think it's students who are able to convey an interest in the autodidacts, the people who want to be able to teach themselves, who go the extra mile on their own, are the ones that very often are accepted into the best schools, because colleges love that kind of independence and drive. So 8 traits of a strong portfolio are that they are self-reflective. So the student is saying, this is something that I'm thinking about, and I'm judging my own work and conveying why I think this is good or this shows growth. They are student-driven, so it's not, they can certainly use a great push, but it really needs to be the student who's willing to take this on and put in that extra time. It's not everything that you've created. Number 3 is that it's carefully selected. Just those specific projects that you think shows that kind of growth and development. It has a clear rationale. Why am I showing this to you? What do I actually want to share? It's also supposed to evolve with the student. So the way a portfolio looks at the beginning of the summer should very well be different than it might look at the end of the summer after they've done one of those programs that Barb is describing. It has a consistent goal. It illustrates that growth. And importantly, it's also molded by example. There are some wonderful examples of MIT creative portfolios you can find on YouTube. They ask that their videos be under 2 minutes, and I've seen some really creative and really engaging student videos that summarize all of the amazing work that they've done building rockets from scratch, for example, in under 2 minutes. So those are great examples for students to go and explore. In addition to being able to show this growth, I like to say that research brings a lot of values, and it teaches a lot of lessons in addition to the content learning that we may not even notice. One is organization. Being able to not only organize your thoughts and set them out clearly with a research paper, but also being able to organize your thoughts as you go through reading other papers and taking notes. Creating some sort of system for that organization so that you can go back to things that you might have read 6 months ago and only now are becoming useful to you. It helps students with time management. I did not do research of any impressive variety in high school. In point of fact, I was lucky if I started most of my papers a week ahead of time, let alone 2 days ahead of time. I think I really would have benefited from this kind of experience, working with a mentor, working with an expert, to take the innate curiosity that I had and to channel it into things that, into modules, let's say, or milestones that I could use to chip away at consistently. And that goes, I suppose, skipping to the last point of resilience, being able to commit to something over a long period of time, even when you run into obstacles, finding ways of getting around them and achieving your goal. And finally, to jump back up, clear communication. I think this ties into what I was saying about the clarity of the portfolio, not just for specialists within the field, but being able to describe the value of the research you're doing, whether it's in the humanities or whether it's in the sciences, to the greater public, how your research is making the world a better place, so to speak. One of the quotes that I like from a president emeritus of Harvard is that, and sort of speaks to the liberal arts quality of research. It's not just born within STEM fields, but the sort of notion of a liberal education that teaches students how to learn, communicate, build character, and prepare for a career. All of these skills will contribute to that ultimate goal. There are many ways of finding a research mentor. Typically, those mentors, people who are PhD candidates, who are professors, they benefited from someone taking them under their wing at some point in their life, and they want to be able to pay that experience forward. They are, however, as you might imagine, very busy. And so the best way to approach them would be to find someone who has an interest in mentoring. As I mentioned, a lot of profs or even graduate students at great research universities, research might be their primary goal, not teaching. And so those profs or students might not be the people to reach out to. Identifying the researcher with the right expertise. If you're a student who's interested in gene editing and you're fascinated by CRISPR, it's best not to reach out to someone who is more of an expert in gene therapies, like the fabrication of vaccines. You really need to do that research to know who the researcher is that will be right for you. You need to demonstrate your interest, not that this is just something that you've decided that this is going to be your new project, but that you've spent significant time already familiarizing yourself with the field, doing some experiments perhaps. That's the right time to reach out, not at the beginning of your exploration of a new area. And in addition to articulating specifically what help is needed, you need to be respectful of their time. Your asks should be direct, clear, and show your appreciation if and when they do get back to you. So how do you develop a topic? Again, because all of these things are very possible without a mentor. One of the students that I'll be speaking with later, both of them actually have done amazing work already in developing projects on their own. I say embrace what inspires you, not what's popular. Make sure that you're following your own guiding light in a sense. You need to read a lot. This can start with Wikipedia, but it needs to get to books. It needs to get to peer-reviewed publications and notable journals. You need to learn about the time investment that's needed. Take good notes and organize your work. Always seek encouragement from parents and counselors. Importantly, you will encounter obstacles. That's a time when you need to reach out to your network to ask for help or just commiseration in a sense. Think about showcasing your results. Very often research that we do, if it's not published, if it doesn't get accepted in that peer-reviewed journal that we were wishing it did, it can be very easy just to slide into a drawer. Don't do that. Find a way of sharing it with the world. It could be, creating a link in your Instagram story. It could be publishing a blog. You just need to find a way to celebrate your achievements and improve. Improve the quality of life, improve the quality of conversation around a given topic, improve the quality of your own writing, however you wish to improve in this process. Make sure that you feel like you've taken that step forward at the end. Another wonderful project that we've done, supported at Polygence, is a student who was really interested in neurological disorders. So she did a sort of state of the research literature review on neurodegenerative disease, specifically dementia and amnesia. And the product is a really excellent 7-episode podcast that explains what memories are and how they're affected by these disorders. It's called Foggy Minds, available on Spotify, Google Podcasts, and other podcast platforms. I think this is a great example of something that contains rigorous research, looking through these excellent journals of record within the field, working with a physician who's doing this research actively, but that also is seeking a way of sharing it with a broader public and not just the people who might read a specific journal, for example. I think that kind of public intellectual life is all the more important today to make sure that our research matters and resonates with the general public. And I'm so impressed that it was a 16-year-old from New York who decided to take on and complete that project. Okay, so let's say that you have developed a baseline of experience and knowledge within a specific topic field, and now you want to begin to reach out to mentors because you really need help on carrying your project forward. Here's an example of a cold email that did not break through the noise. It's just a little bit ambiguous. It seems not to identify the specific field of interest from the mentor that they're reaching out to. In this case, it's my colleague Janos, who wrote his dissertation on visibility cloaks at MIT. You are asking for a really broad question. Can you guide me in the metamaterial field? It's a very honest and earnest ask, I think, but there's really not a good place to start. And sometimes mentors worry that by engaging with the student, they'll be asking for more than the mentor can give. And that wouldn't be a satisfying result for anybody. An example of a much better cold email is identifying a specific area of that mentor or professor's interest or research that you can connect with, that you understand, or that you've tried to work through and you're having a little bit of a problem. So in this case, a specific equation is cited. They're asking for a much smaller ask in a sense. And it's also showing deference and respect for, taking the time to reply. Take some time to craft those. It's going to be a lot. Cold emails are really difficult. People do not always reply to them. I know what that is like, most certainly. So if anything, don't be discouraged if you get no responses. Just keep at it. Develop that grit and resilience that will serve you well when you do come in contact with the mentor and drive a project forward. That's going to be a great lesson to use no matter what field you go into. There are many different ways of showcasing results, as I've said. There are these great peer-reviewed secondary school journals. There are science competitions, fellowship programs. There are other outlets in addition to podcasts. Blogging is a really wonderful way of doing this. Writing policy-style white papers that you self-publish is another great way of doing it if you're interested in policy work or nonprofit work. And there's also a way of sort of giving back directly using these sort of public social media channels. In this case, a student worked with an MA in psychology from Columbia to try to understand better the different mental stressors that were affecting the mental health of high schoolers. In this case, they wanted to create a mental health advocacy group called Cats to Cats, which is for Los Gatos High School, where the student was from. And it's really led to this wonderful network of support within the school, but it also has a clear marketing channel on social media with a YouTube channel that promotes mental health awareness for teenagers. So this is a great example of academic research that's meant to literally improve the world where the student is. It's got a sense of giving back. It clearly is also, I think, a good blueprint for nonprofit work in the space. And it also connects with an experience that high schooler was likely having themselves. So something that resonates with you in a very personal way, those can be the projects that you're most motivated to see through to a satisfying completion. As I say, after working for 2 years as a research program manager at Stanford, I was really delighted to start mentoring for Polygence. I was actually hiring a student for a faculty project, and they put me in touch with my colleague, Jin, who is one of the co-founders. We work with students across the STEM fields, the humanities, business, and I'm happy to take questions about that, of course, at the end or offline. A slate of really fantastic mentors, and we have a new college credit program with the University of California at Irvine to award college credits for research papers written in our mentorships. It's a really exciting new program. IMGP, this is my colleague, Jin. Thank you so much for being with me tonight. Barb, thank you for the invitation. Kathy, thank you so much. I'm happy now to start speaking directly with students as well.
Okay, I see that my image is frozen. I don't know what I can do about that, but I'll just ignore that and keep on going. So I noticed while you were speaking that we have viewers from all over the world tonight. We have someone from Milan, Italy, from Honolulu, Hawaii, people, of course, from Boca, St. John's, Florida, New Haven. And I want to say thank you to everyone for joining us and welcome to all of you. I want to make a special mention and a welcome to Stephen Turbin from Lumiere, which is another wonderful research organization. I'd also like to say thank you for joining us to Joel Butterly, who is from Scholar Launch, another one of the fine research organizations that we alluded to. When the program is over this evening, you might go to our website and download the brochure that lists all of the research programs that we recommend. We've vetted them. We've got several really good choices for you. They are all equally expert. They are all professionals. They're all interested in student growth. And so with that, I would like to say thank you again to our guest, Dr. George Philip LeBourdais. And I really like the quote. I really like what you said. Embrace what inspires you, not what's popular. And that really is the heart of the college admissions game. What parents need to know, what kids need to know is that following the path that everyone else takes is not the way to be noticed by the admissions office. The way to be noticed, the way to get in, is by being your own person and doing something that will make you stand out. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce two of our students who certainly stand out. Kathy, can you bring them on screen? Hi, Riley.
Hi, how are you?
Hi, Riley.
Hi, Jaden, can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, so
Hi, Jaden.
Hi.
Riley, I'm going to ask you to start by introducing yourself.
Hi, my name is Riley Prinsky, and I'm a senior at Spanish River High School in Boca Raton, Florida, and I'm interested in majoring in the psychology field.
Okay. Riley, what brought about your interest in psychology? Where did that come from?
So in the beginning of my sophomore year, I began a community service project called Fresh Threads, in which serves economically challenged students by collecting and donating new and gently used school supplies and school uniforms in order to improve their confidence and motivation. And then this drove me to take interest in psychology because I really enjoy helping people and improving their emotional health.
So tell us a little bit about your research idea.
So my research idea was based on my experience actually having lunch in the cafeteria at school. I witnessed that many lower-income students had the benefit of receiving free lunches at school, which then led me to question how these people would be able to afford lunch in college. And so I did some research and found an article on this specific subject. And then I wrote to the professor who published this article, and then I asked her for mentorship on this research project.
Okay, and what happened after you wrote to the professor?
So when I wrote to her, I was trying to gain more insight, but I actually didn't get a response. And I also contacted my sophomore year AP psychology teacher at my high school, and we discussed the topic of behavioral medicine with her, and she advised me to choose a specialty in psychology and focus on that area rather than psychology as a whole.
Well, I think that your experience is not uncommon for other students. It's often very difficult to get the attention of a professor at a university. The professors, the research assistants, they're all really busy and engaged in their own work. And very often it's a long and tedious process that's also often unrewarding for students who work so hard to craft their letters and send their resumes, and a little bit disappointing. So I wanted to ask you, do you have a question that you'd like to ask?
I actually do have a question. So I was wondering, how can I define a clear question that I could start my research project on behavioral medicine and psychology?
GP, what do you think?
Yes, well, Riley, I really commend you for the work that you have already done. I think being sensitive to the world around you and recognizing that need, wanting to improve the lives of students who may not have the ability or the resources to lead the lives that we would all wish in those situations is really commendable. So that is already a major achievement. Thank you for doing that. And I would definitely second Barb's observation that this is an experience that lots of us have. I can speak even from my part during my PhD. On occasion, I would reach out to researchers in my field across either the country or the world and receive no responses either, even though I was really hoping to create that new connection. And what I can say is, as I mentioned in the presentation, keep on going. It will be discouraging the first time, But the more and more you experience that kind of frustration, the tougher, the more you will steel yourself against it. With regards to developing a specific project within behavioral medicine and psychology, I would encourage you to continue to think about what is the specific, because you've done such a great job with this initial project, what is the specific need that you're interested in solving for? And just, I'll let you think about that because I would love to hear your response, but I want to give you an example. This is not my field, but it's one I have looked into on your behalf. I've just read the Office of Behavioral Sciences, Behavior and Social Sciences Research Strategic Plan for 2016-2021. They sort of identify a number of different goals for themselves in order to bring behavioral medicine more into the mainstream of psychological research. And one of the things they do a good job of in that study is including smaller research studies that looked at things like, what is the likelihood that African-American men develop cancer in situations where they don't have access to proper screening? What are the risks of premature death for certain socioeconomic registers within, within certain populations? And another one was looking at helping to reduce the incidence of type 2 diabetes with lifestyle intervention. These kind of behavioral changes that lead to extreme improvements in outcomes for whole swaths of the population. So is there an area that you would want to jump into? What would you like to do to help make someone's life better? And that can sort of help you decide what area of psychology specifically you want to explore more.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Okay, and now you're up, Jaden. So how about if you introduce yourself?
Okay, so hello, my name is James Spitolnik. I'm a rising senior at Olympic Heights, which is also in Boca Raton. And then for my prospective major, I want to major in computer science.
So as a sports fan who moved from Baltimore to South Florida, what challenge did you face? And what are you going to do to solve the problem?
So being in South Florida, not in Baltimore anymore, it's very rare to find people who like the same football team as me. So I'm very big into football, and from Baltimore being a very big Ravens fans, most people down here are either Jets, Giants, or Dolphins fans. So don't always find that like click. And so I was thinking about like what's a way that I can like reach out to more people, because right now I'm limited to talking to my dad or maybe a select friends that I still have from up north. And so I thought of this idea that was this like sports app where you can like if you're familiar with like the NFL app where you select your favorite teams, it works in the beginning like that, and then you automatically get placed in group chats with people who also like those teams, so you can meet people from around the country who like the same teams as you do without marketing it yourself. It makes it a little easier for you to meet new people and talk about sports, I guess.
So do you have a question that you want to ask?
Yeah, so currently I'm working on I'm researching a lot of different ways on making this. I'm getting to technology I'm not quite familiar with. And so I was wondering if you had a preference in sort of research, like where I should kind of aim towards or focus on, whether that's looking at blogs, forum pages, or like YouTube videos. If maybe one is better than the other, stay away from one.
Well, Jaden, this is a great question. I want to say I really admire your initiative there, because there's the sort of technical aspect of what you're doing, but there's really a social connection issue behind it that you're trying to solve. And I think that those are the kinds of apps that really resonate with people, and not just that's trying to do something for the sake of just for the pure sake of connection, but really, there's like a motivation behind it, and it's inherently fun and rewarding. So I think it's a really great idea. In terms of forums, I'm definitely partial to YouTube. My wife actually is a designer at YouTube, so it's sort of within the family, so to speak. But could you tell me a little bit more in terms of what kind of research you are thinking thinking about on those different platforms?
So, because like I'm into like coding and programming, I'm kind of looking up either different packages or like coding methods to kind of build the app. So like I was working on the kind of sorting feature where you like sign in with your teams, and so I was like looking up how to like find kind of the best ways to people sort like everyone based on who they like. And so there's forums, which is like somebody posts a question, like everybody gives their own answer, like a YouTube video where it's kind of like somebody who's more of an expert into it and kind of wondering which one you think I should like kind of focus on.
Well, I know that I've always appreciated when I have my coding expertise is extremely limited. Let me just preface by saying, but when I have problems, I know that you've been working in in Python. When I have problems with these kinds of widely used languages, I like to go to GitHub or Stack Overflow. I think that those are two good resources where there's a very active community who are contributing in an open source way, really earnestly trying to help other people solve problems. So those are two that I like to go to. I will say that I found some great tutorials on that are both published by universities or that are independently published, as you were saying, by experts on YouTube. And the benefit of those is very often that they have screen share, that they just lead you through the steps so you can actually see what the lines look like. And that to me, because I'm a very visual learner, that to me is something that is really helpful. So that would be my 2 cents there. But one of the really great things about doing research broadly is understanding what kind of learning style you have. You can also begin to understand what times of day work for you. Am I doing my creative coding work in the morning when I don't have anything else in my mind? Am I doing it at night when I've sort of had a chance to rev up my brain for the day and I have lots of different ideas coming in? So that's another thing I would encourage you to think really actively about in terms of self-reflection. How are these different resources helping me? Is this one actually seeming like it's helping me along further than this other one? And once you find that thing that's helping to move you forward, then keep on exploring it.
I want to thank both of you, Jaden and Riley, because your part in the program is maybe just as important as GP's. He can be the expert and provide the information that consultants and parents want to hear. But for kids who are thinking about taking on a project, for kids who are trying to figure out how are they going to get into college, you have provided a great example of what kids can really accomplish when they put their minds to it. So I applaud you. I know you can't see me because my image is frozen, but I'm clapping. I applaud you, and I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart. You guys were really good sports to come on the program this evening and to share your challenges and your triumphs with all of us. And of course, Kathy, we can say goodnight to our 2 students so that they can go and do their homework, whatever else they're doing.
Thank you very much for your participation. That was wonderful. I loved hearing about your projects. So I'll say goodnight.
And I have resources to share directly with both of you afterwards too. Thanks so much for joining us.
And Riley, before you go, take a look at the chat, because I noticed that some of our experts who are on the chat also wrote messages to you, so that you can take a look at that and take advantage of the expertise of Lumiere, Stephen Turbin, and Dr. Joel Butterly as they put up some feedback for each of you before the night is over. So kids, thank you again, and good night to both of you. And GP, hang on, we're going to take some questions.
Great.
All right, so let's see. Actually, just one question that I had, and for either one of you, maybe for Barb, what's the best way? I mean, these projects sound amazing, and when it comes time to apply for colleges, what's the best way for students to share? Is there a place on the application? How can they submit all this great work and share it with colleges?
This is a great question. Barb, I would love to hear through your expert experience what you found the best way of sort of pulling together these packets are. But Kathy, to answer your question from my point of view, I think that these creative portfolios or research style supplements are really wonderful opportunities for a student to do so. It can be, as I mentioned, as simple as recording a video that sort of summarizes the work that a student's done. It can be something, I know, like within my field, people who have architecture portfolios, that can be a really wonderful way of showing your design skills and also how you want to connect in a really visually striking way that an admissions reader can go through and grasp very quickly, very often faster than they might grasp the major point of an essay if they take the time to read it entirely from start to finish. So looking for those opportunities to submit extra supplements or portfolios, I think that's a great place to package it in order to be able to share the outcome.
Oh, great. Thank you. All right, let me just check the chat here. I think we've got everything. So many people from all over. And what I'll do is actually in the chat, in case you have a question, and for whatever reason I might have missed it, or you think of it later, I posted my email address in the chat. So then that way, if you have any questions, our audience, it's hard@scoreatthetop.com. I'll be happy to pass them along to Barb and GP. But it looks like, oh, go ahead.
I can jump in, and I see David asked a question that's certainly, I'm sure, top of mind for many counselors.
Just missed that one.
But it's something I've also been wondering about. My mom was a college admissions officer at Bowdoin College. My sister-in-law was at Stanford. I can't imagine how they will get through the mountains of applications they have in a test optional world. Read the question
out loud so that everyone can know what you're
answering. Thank you. Will standardized testing consider evolving to meet the new demands created by the latest California admissions? I can't imagine what admissions committees will have to go through without test scores. And I wish that I could tell you that I had a better insight into how they're going to approach it. My intuition is that they will have to hire more readers and make sure, in a way, it's a really wonderful change because it's looking at a student more holistically. But it just means that there need to be more eyes on these kinds of applications in order to understand the person behind them. So we will see how it plays out for at least the time being, these projects that help to break through the noise. And to Kathy's question too, visual ways or video ways of conveying interest, expertise, curiosity, creativity. I think that those will increasingly become important for schools in order to be able to sort through all of the interested students.
I just want to throw my 2 cents in on this topic too about standardized testing. I think that whether this is a wonderful thing or not depends on whether you're a really good tester or not. So for those kids who are superior testers, the lack of the opportunity to show their stuff is a detriment to them. So for their sake, I hope that there are some places that will still encourage students to prepare themselves for a standardized exam. And for those students who are not great testers, the option of participating, sending in your test scores or not sending it in is really the best way to go. And as every good counselor tells their students, if your test scores will help you in the admissions process, meaning that if your score is in the 50% of admitted students, then go ahead and by all means, if it's there or above, then by all means submit your score. And if the school is test optional and your score does not meet that medium 50%, then don't submit your score. That's the beauty of test optional. I also wanted to ask you, Kathy, can you, is there a way that you can show what handouts we have for this evening?
I can't. They can go to, but you can go to scorewebinar.com to access and download the handouts.
Okay, so I've provided a handout that lists 4 research programs where I personally know the people involved, have had students who've worked with them. And I think, GP, what did you provide for us?
I have a short list of some wonderful secondary student publications, some of which are STEM oriented, some of which are humanities oriented, and they have different levels of peer review oversight. Some are edited by secondary students, some are edited by experts within the field. And they're all great opportunities for students who have ambitious publication goals and want to share their work to explore and read. It's only after exploring those publications that you know what the house style will be and the sort of standards that they expect from their submissions. So I think those will be good resources for people who are, for students who are eager to share their work.
I know that in the state of Florida, many of the high schools require students to do research as part of the curriculum. The AP now is offering courses on AP research. So the trend and the importance of research is continuing to grow. I hope that the information that we've presented this evening has been useful to you. Students, I want to thank you again. GP, thank you so much. Your presentation was really, really powerful. And I know that you really made a contribution to all of those who are watching this evening. Kath, thanks for being the co-host and administrator behind the scenes. And I want to thank you on behalf of Score at the Top and Judy Rabinovitz and Associates, Educational Consultants. Thank you again, and good night.
Thank you all so very much for coming. If we missed your questions, if you have anything out, any other additional follow-ups to tonight's webinar, please email me. It's Hart, H-A-R-T, at scoreatthetop.com. I also put my email in the chat in case I missed anything. It was so nice seeing you both tonight. Great webinar, and we'll see everyone shortly in the future. Take care. Have a good night. Thank you. Bye-bye.